So hello and welcome to another live digital marketing workshop. And these workshops are brought to you by your friends at MintTwist, the digital agency. You can check us out at minttwist.com. Now, these workshops are also live streamed. They're actually live streamed to multiple channels and platforms. And to do that, we use the amazing Restream software. So, my name is Elliott King. I work with MintTwist, and today I'm going to be talking with you about video editing. So in this episode, we're going to learn about the basics of video editing, the key things that we need to consider when we're editing a video for marketing. And as this series is really aimed at marketers and comms people and managers and students and even business owners, anyone really who wants to understand how they can use digital tools and techniques to improve their marketing, we will be coming at this subject of video editing from a marketer's perspective. So this particular video is part 4 in a 5-part series all about how to get started in video marketing. And if you haven't watched the other episodes, I recommend that you go back and watch those first because they work well together as a collection. You'll find links to those other videos in the notes somewhere around this video. So what are we going to learn in today's episode? Well, we're going to talk a bit about the editing tools and just what they look like and how they're set up. We're also going to talk about the 8 key steps for editing a video. And then we're going to talk about some extra tips and some mistakes that you should try and avoid. And then we'll finish off by looking at the 9 cuts for rich video. So these are transitions between scenes, and we'll talk about some of the slightly more advanced techniques that video editors will use. So this is a live workshop. So if you are watching live, please do comment below with your name and say hello, and maybe let us know where you're from if you feel like it, because it's great to have a bit of interactivity. Most of you will be watching on replay, but even if you're watching on replay, please do leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about this video and the others that we're producing. So, video editing tools. So there's a number of tools out there. And we'll talk generally about how they work rather than dive into any specific detail. But broadly speaking, you've got some different types of groups of tools. So we have these screen capture tools. So if you're doing tutorials like this, and what we're seeing up on the screen here is screen capture element of video, and screen capture tools, there's a subset of them, and they kind of do what they say on the tin, really. They just capture what's going on the screen, and you can overlay some audio and potentially even some video on top of those types of systems. There's the bulk of tools which are video editing tools, and those are the ones that we'll be focusing on for most of this episode, and we'll start talking about them in a moment. And then there's a third set of tools which is all about converting media. You've got a lot of different video formats out there, and it might be the case that you need some video conversion tools to convert different formats so that you can bring them in together. So the conversion tools and the screen capture tools are 2 specialist types of software. We'll go forward now and talk about how to edit video in general. So as you can see on the screen here, you've got a piece of video in the top frame there, and in the bottom frames you see a bunch of different tracks, and they are overlaid with each other. So in general, you can pull in a collection of video files and a collection of audio files, and you arrange them in a sort of storyboard, which for all editing softwares looks like a series of tracks that overlap each other to a certain extent. So if you've got an audio track and a video track and they're overlapping in each other, it's once you export the video from that piece of editing software, you're essentially exporting the sound component, the video component, and the software will turn it into a single audio visual file. So the idea is that you arrange different snippets of video and audio in a software, and once you finished arranging, you've finished your editing and you export and you've got your video. In the simplest sense, that's how it works. So most of these tools will all have the same sort of workspace area. Typically there'll be 3 areas. So what we'll see is some sort of preview screen, which is what our edited video will look like, and that might be in the top left of the screen. In the top right of the screen, you would have a view of all of the files that you're using to pull in to create the final video that you're trying to create. So that might be a number of little video files of different scenes that you've captured in order to create your video. It might be some image sources. You can pull down static images and blend them into a video that you export. And obviously you might have audio tracks as well, and that could be music or could be audio that you've recorded yourself. So the idea is you pull in all of the source files that you're going to use to make up your final video, and then you pull them down into the bottom area of the screen, which is where you are arranging all of the audio and video tracks, and you're arranging them in a manner that's going to allow them to play out together in order to create your final video. Now obviously this is where most of the work is done, and inside this area you can take a snippet of a video, you can shorten it, you can take out the audio and add some other audio by dragging audio in place of the existing audio. You can apply filters, you can apply what's called transitions, which is how the video will move from one video track to another video track, and you can apply all sorts of other special effects as you might be able to imagine. But in general, whether you're going for a very top of the range video editing software, something like Adobe Premiere Pro, or something as basic as iMovie that will, if you've got an Apple phone, will be installed on your iPhone, they all basically work in the same way. When you go to the very high-end pieces of software, you're basically just buying lots and lots of extra features and functionality. So those are the key elements of the software. Let's talk about the steps for editing. So what do you actually practically need to do? So there are kind of 8 steps. And remember, if you haven't watched part 1, 2, and 3, do go back, because the idea is if you watch those 3, you would have built up, you would have actually captured some video, and you'll be ready to go into this editing process. So once you've captured a bunch of video and audio files that you're going to build together into your marketing video, that you're going to edit together into your marketing video, then you need to take all of those files and put them in one organized area on your desktop or laptop. Typically you would be doing editing on. So you organize all of those files and get them all together. That's step number 1. And step number 2 is you watch all of the footage, ideally in the order in which you eventually believe that it's going to play out. You watch it and you listen to it, and you just get a feel for what it's like in its raw state. Now, once you've done that, you can do what's called an assembly edit. So this is basically taking all of your raw footage, your audio visual content, and organizing it in an order that's going to reflect the storyline of your video. So in part 2 we spoke about planning a video, and in that plan you're going to have a number of scenes that you would have loosely at least planned out, and the assembly edit is replicating the footage that we've got in a manner that reflects that plan for that particular video. and then we've got our fine cutting. So now we're going to, as one piece of video footage transitions into another, there'll probably be pauses, there'll be bits that we need to cut off the end of one video and at the start of the other video in order to transition them together. So this fine tuning is cutting out all of the bits that we don't really need, that are unnecessary to the final video that we're trying to create. So next we're going to add what's called B-roll and background images. So very often when you're creating a video, you'll want to use supporting imagery to support part of that video storyline. So an example here might be a shot of something that's going on your screen whilst using the audio from a video that you took of yourself when you were at the computer. So we would take the audio from one track and we would overlay it onto the video from our screen capture track, and we would have that as a tightly created scene within our wider and larger video. We can also introduce text overlays using most editing software. You can have a title, introductions, potentially introduction, introducing the people that are in your video, and other image and text graphic overlays can be applied. Step 7 is checking the sound. So before you export, playback in preview mode, is it loud enough? Most editing software will give you the ability to boost the volume of a video if it's not loud enough. You also, in most editing software, you will have some form of ability to normalize the sound. So if you've got a number of video tracks, it might be the case that the sound was louder on one video track and quieter on another. And once you put those together into a video, it sounds a bit weird. So you can select all of the video tracks and normalize them, and the editing software will bring them down to a standardized volume level. And there are other sound editing techniques you can use as well. And step 8 is our final review then. So we listen to everything from start to finish, and seasoned editors will say that this is where you can add a lot of value by being really strict and cutting out the pauses, the ums, the ers, and even the unnecessary components of a video can add a lot of value to the final product. Okay, so those were the key 8 steps for creating video, but editing video. But let's just talk about some other things that are worth remembering. So in series 1 and 2, we spoke about when we're creating video for marketing, it's really beneficial to create a series of episodes, because that allows us to build up a storyline of useful content for our audiences. As marketeers, the video that we want to create in many cases is going to be value sharing of some kind, and creating episodes in a series is definitely a good way to create value for your audiences. So if you do have a plan for a series of episodes, then build out a file structure on your laptop, on your computer, and so that when you're dropping in your raw files, but more importantly, when you're creating the final video versions for each episode, you're outputting them into a dedicated folder for that episode that sits underneath a dedicated folder for that series. And that will help you significantly once you get into the run of planning, creating, editing, and then launching marketing videos. That will help you a great deal. Some common mistakes just to consider is screen direction. So if you've got videos where people are moving around and things are going on, just remember the context of the video from the point of view of the viewer. If we've got a character walking one way in the next scene, we want them to continue to move in that direction. If they're seen to be coming in an opposite direction, it gives a weird effect in the minds of our audiences. Timing, is an important thing to understand. So depending again on our end platform, but if we've done our planning correctly, we'll know what our end platforms are. We just need to be conscious about how quickly we move around with our video or not. And like I say, that's going to be very specific to the type of video it is and to the platform, but just having an understanding of timing and the sense of time is very important. Pauses and lags and ums and ers, like we're all prone to, those things don't add any value at all to a video, and in general we try and cut them out. Obviously in a live video like this it's pretty difficult, but if we're going for pre-recorded video, which is what we're talking about here, then cutting those things out makes a lot of sense. And continuity is another thing to consider. Just remember the context of the scene, the context of of what's been going on in your video, and if you can get that right, then it adds a lot of value to the final product. So let's talk about cuts. So 9 cuts for rich video content. So what is a cut, first of all? Well, quite simply, really, it's a transition from one mini scene to another mini scene in a video. And the way these transitions play out can positively impact the effect that you're looking to create within your audiences. And so video editors use cuts to create different effects in the minds of their audiences. And let's just talk about some of the key ones here. So a cut, as we said, is a transition from one scene to another. And the first cut we'll talk about is the standard cut. So it's quite simply when one clip ends and another clip starts, we just join them together on editing software, and quite simply one will end and the other one will start to play out. That's the simplest form of cut. Now there's something called a jump cut, and this is when we've got an extended conversation, which for example would be a live workshop video like this. If we wanted to edit this video down into a 2-minute version of this video, we might have a series of jump cuts, which is jumping between me making some of the key points. So that would be a series of quite abrupt movements from one sentence in one part of the video to another sentence in another part of the video. So these jump cuts can look a bit strange in videos, but depending on the type of video that you're going for, it can work as well. So then we talk about the J cut. So the J cut is when the sound from the scene that's following the one you're watching is being played during the one you're watching. So this gives the viewer a sense of where they're going to with the video. So now I've explained this to you, you'll probably notice this when you watch TV or other sorts of videos. The J cut is used by video editors and video creators to create the sense of giving the viewer an idea of where they're going. And the L cut is actually opposite, the complete opposite of J cut. So this is when the audio from the previous scene is playing over the top of the video from the scene that will follow that scene. And this is quite often used in interviews, particularly sort of news and political interviews and things like that. You'll see a picture, a video of the interviewee whilst the interviewer is asking the question, and that audio is placed over the top of the view of the interviewee. So action cut. So the idea here is you cut straight in on action. So this kind of wakes up and alerts the viewer and brings them to life. So, you could imagine scenarios where you might want to use the action cut. There are a number of other cuts, we'll just summarize them here. So there's cross-cutting. So this is where you've got two interconnecting stories being played out alongside each other. So imagine in an action movie, something like The Godfather, when he is repenting his sins in the church, and at the same time there are a whole bunch of murders being carried out on the Godfather's command, and those scenes will interplay with each other in order to give the viewer the experience of the story as the video creators want to convey it. And obviously there are plenty of other creative ways you can use cross-cutting. Cast away is when we shift out of one scene into another that's completely different, and very often we'll use sort of B-roll footage. So if you imagine a scene of a family having an argument in a big busy city, you might cut away to a scene of rolling beautiful hills in the lovely countryside, and nature in it being in its glorious self. That would be an example of a castaway. It takes you away from one scene and into another completely different scene, very often using B-roll, which means background video and images. So a montage scene, so this is a series of sequences that will show a quick progression of time, and the classic is the montage scene that might happen in the middle of a movie where they want to tell where they want to tell a story over a long period, but they want to tell it in a very short period of time. The classic one is Rocky, the boxing champion movies. He gets beaten up at the start of the movie, he's nearly down and out, and then he goes away and does some intensive training for many months, but we just want to show that in a short scene. There'll be lots of clips of him running upstairs, punching bags, and drinking lots of health juices, and those will be montaged together in order to tell the story in a rapid manner. And then there's the match cut. So this is when you've got a scene of, for example, a couple jumping onto a double bed together, and then it will cut to them jumping off a boat in a wonderful holiday location. So the commonality is the jumping and the couples, but we're taken from one scene in their bedroom in their home to another scene to a beautiful boat in a lovely holiday destination somewhere. So that's the match cut. So what have we learned today? We've learned a bit about the editing tools and how they work. We've learned about the 8 key steps for editing. So these are the things that we need to do once we've produced our source video content. These are the things that we need to do in order to pull them together and edit a video. We've looked at some extra tips, and then we've looked at the 9 more advanced cuts. So, once you've been experimenting with editing video for a little while, you might want to play with some of these things. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. If we can help you with anything at all, please do reach out. We're always delighted to answer any questions. You can reach me directly, or you can speak to any of us at the agency. But until next time, I will look forward and hope to see you in another video very, very soon. Bye-bye.